Hey, what's going on YouTube? Today I'm going to be talking about how to make a decent amount of gold through Merchant's Guild, and a few of these also require COF, but basically this video is going to go over how to make a good amount of gold so that you can get stuff in Merchant's Guild so that you can progress your build, basically. So the first way, and the way that most people are probably going to know, is the running of arena. So the most optimal way of doing this is getting a regular arena key and running endless arena. Now, the reason you don't want to do a arena key of memory is because the gold that you get from killing enemies in the endless arena does not scale very quickly. So that for having that like first 100 waves just, saves you the effort of having to refresh your key more frequently, as the difficulty will start to ramp up faster if you start at wave 100. So I would typically start with just a regular arena key and start at wave 0 so that you get the most gold per key, I guess. Also, make sure that if you're running the regular arena strategy that you are getting your Fall of the Outcast's blessing for gold drop rate. In particular, you would want to try and go for the grand one. Although the gold doesn't scale per wave that well, getting the Fall of the Outcast blessing will definitely help you with how much gold you're gonna get through the arena. So yeah, definitely go for that blessing as well. The second strategy that I have is target farming uniques from bosses. Now, that doesn't just mean monolith quests, although monolith quests do have a lot of good boss drops. For example, there are boss drops like Last Steps of the Living from the Blood, Frost, and Death guy. If you drop those with 2 LP, it's worth like 10 million gold. If you drop 2 LP Frost Shackles from the same boss, those are worth like 15 million gold. You drop 2 LP on a Reign of Winter bow from the Age of Winter boss, that's another like, some 10 million gold. And then there's also, you've got like your 2 LP Twisted Heart from the Reign of Dragons boss fight, which is also worth like 15 million gold. So of course you're not going to get it every time, and it does help to push corruption, because when you push corruption it gives you an increased chance of dropping the rarer items from these bosses, but it also gives you the opportunity to get legendary potential on your items. Something to note about pushing corruption is it doesn't increase the odds of what LP roll you get. For example, if I drop a Twisted Heart in 500 corruption, I won't get a higher chance of it being LP2 because I'm in 500 corruption, but I will have a higher chance of it having LP in general. So typically when you go further out and you get more corruption, it will give you a higher chance of the item actually having legendary potential. But then the amount of legendary potential on the item is pure random, and it's decided based on the odds on the scale. So if you look at like the market, that's the reason why you don't see like 4 LP Twisted Hearts, even though there are people pushing thousands of corruption. It has to do with the fact that the odds are literally so small. Even when you're pushing really high corruption, you might be dropping a 1 LP Twisted Heart every time, but you won't be dropping high LP Twisted Hearts every time. That's what makes them worth so much, and why they're still pretty hard to find, and higher LP stuff, that is. And that's why like 1 LP stuff for the most part isn't worth much, but 2 LP is where it like starts to ramp up in price very quickly. Apart from the monolith bosses, you can also farm things like the Lightless Arbor, which has currently 3 uniques that people are highly desiring, especially if you get a large amount of LP on them. For a 3 LP Peak of the Mountain, you can get like 10 million gold from it. It's a 50-50 drop from the Lightless Arbor if you're running tier 4. Foot of the Mountain 2 LP is worth anywhere from 5 to 10 million based on your rolls on the item. And then Core of the Mountain, which you can only get in tier 4, is at face value worth like 200k, I think. And then for 1 LP it's worth like 5 mil. In 2 LP it's worth like 50 mil. So there's that as well. You can also farm tier 1 Jewel Rub. Tier 1 Jewel Rub guarantee. So tier 1 Temporal Sanctum guarantees drops Jewelra's Star Dial. Now, the reason that's interesting is a 1 LP Star Dial is guaranteed to drop every time, with a chance of it having more LP than 1, right? So if you look at, like, say, last Epoch tools, you'll see in tier 1 Temporal Sanctum, you have a 100% drop rate to drop a Jewel Restart Dial, and it has a guaranteed chance to drop with 1 LP, and then it has a 1% chance, a 1.35% chance of dropping with 2 LP. Now, if it does drop with 2 LP, that is 50 million gold in your bank, easy. And then if you somehow drop with 3 LP, you're making close to 1 billion gold. So jewelry farming, particularly tier 1 for the star dials guarantee drop, is actually definitely worth doing. And then, of course, you also can farm Oribus. If your build is pushing high corruption, there are a lot of valuable drops in the Shade of Oribus fight, in particular, like the shackles, the belt that he drops. Also, 3 LP Siphon of Anguish, which is honestly not that rare. It is worth a lot as well. I think it's worth like somewhere around 10 to 15 million for 3 LP Siphon of Anguish. And then you can also drop his Omnis, which, if you get a good roll, Omnis can be worth, upwards of like 20 million without even having LP on it. But most of the time are going to be worth like 200k while they don't have LP on it. If it has LP, it's, going to ramp up the price. I think like a 1 LP Omnis goes for 2 million gold bottom line or so, and it's just going to go up from there. So there are a lot of things to farm for the Shade of Oribus as well. So all of these bosses do have actually pretty solid, worthy loot to farm for. And that's going to bring me into my next strategy, which is just farming regular nodes in monoliths, particularly like the ring and amulet nodes and the unique body armor nodes and stuff like that. Blood, Frost, and Death, if you push corruption pretty high, you'll start seeing the body armor unique nodes constantly. And then the same thing goes for the Age of Winter area. If you do Age of Winter, you can find the ring and amulet nodes. These nodes show up more frequently the higher you push corruption, and these nodes can provide you with some pretty expensive items, particularly things like Red Ring or Orion's Eye or Exsanguinous with multiple LP on it. So target farming specific uniques that are worth currency in monoliths is another great way to farm for gold. Now, this is where it starts to get interesting. The fourth way I have is glyph and rune farming. And you might be asking yourself, wait a minute, Bike, how does somebody make money off of glyphs and runes? If you have a Circle of Fortune character, you can grab prophecies in one of the telescopes that gives you glyphs and or runes. And if you use a doubling lens plus the other doubling lens, so the one that doubles the reward and then the one that doubles the amount of times you can complete a prophecy, you can get these prophecies upwards of, like, you're maybe spending 4,000 favor to get 150 runes. Okay, now runes sell to vendors at 200 gold a piece. So if we do one prophecy and it gives us roughly 150 runes, that is 30,000 gold per prophecy. Now, if you're running, say, I don't know, 20 of those prophecies at once, you're talking about 600,000 gold. Of course, you do have to fill your inventory constantly, and of course, you got to not hit that transfer materials button, because if you hit transfer materials, then you lose all of the gold off the item, because you can't take your runes back out of your crafting materials bank. So do make sure not to hit the transfer materials button while running the strategy, but you could run glyphs and runes and sell them to vendors and make a pretty good amount of currency doing it. And that is also a COF farming strategy, which means the whole time you'll be farming untradeable stuff as well. So keep that in mind. But you can do this with also keys. Keys definitely dropped in price since the last time the key strat was like viable, but it's still like 200 gold a key. Of course, keys don't drop in as much of a bulk as runes and glyphs do. You can find some of these nodes that will drop tons and tons and tons of glyphs or runes for a very cheap amount of favor. So you can just pile on a bunch of these and run them all at once and get hundreds of runes and then just sell them all to vendors. And speaking of runes, my fifth strategy is the Rune of Ascendance farming. So if you farm Rune of Ascendance in particular, you can get a bunch of Rune of Ascendances, save up to like maybe 200 300 Rune of Ascendances from running prophecies on Rune of Ascendance, and then swap your character over to or swap characters in general to a Merchant's Guild character. Go to a gambler in town and buy a bunch of bases, one base for every Rune of Ascendance you have. You can just go to the gambler to get a bunch of bases really quickly, or you can farm for the rare and magic and normal bases, or whatever you want. You can farm for the bases quickly if you want to just farm for them, but I just go to the gambler and buy them that way. And then I will use either, typically I've been doing rings and daggers, particularly because rings have red ring and oak carrion, which are both worth a lot, as well as some of the set rings in particular, like Fairbore's Persistence and Static Touch and stuff like that, are worth a middling amount of gold. But if you hit a red ring, for every red ring you hit, you make about 40 to 50 million gold. And then at the time of recording, that being said, I think Red Ring is crashing in price currently. But then the other opportunity or option is going for daggers and trying to get gel cores, blasting knife, and then trying to get multiple LP on your blasting knives. When you use the Rune of Ascendance, you do get LP for it on your item sometimes, and if you can get 2 or more LP on a gel cores, that's also worth, like, I think a 2 LP gel core is worth 5 million gold each time you hit it, and it's a pretty common thing to happen. It's definitely your odds of getting a 2 LP gel cores from a Rune of Ascendance are definitely higher than getting a red ring, but some people like to aim high, so you can do rings as well. You can do the same thing with honestly, anything that has a good general selling piece of gear that doesn't drop from a boss, because Rune of Ascendance will only find items that are in the random drop pool. That is your best bet. So I do rings or daggers, but you can also do really anything that has good odds to give you something good, that either doesn't require LP if it's too rare, or doesn't require too much LP for it to be worth something still. So for instance, like a 2 LP blast knife, or like something like that. Now, you do want to make sure you are swapping to a Merchant's Guild character before you Rune of Ascendance your rings, because if you do it on a COF character, it will tag the item with COF tag. So definitely make sure you swap over to Merchant's Guild before you do this, so that you can sell the rings afterwards. And then the last thing I have here is pretty straightforward and pretty obvious, I think, and it's filtering for good exalted drops and idols. Idols can be worth a lot of currency. There's certain idols that are worth 200,000 gold just at a face value, and it's like not a difficult to find thing. So it's important to have a good filter that is telling you what to look at least to some degree, what to look at, what to keep in mind. The filter I'm currently running, it has something like 285 highlighted affixes, and then it has like 40 something idle affixes that it's highlighting. And although they're not always worth gold, it gives me an idea of what to look out for, or what could be worth gold. For instance, tier 6 int on a ring at the bottom line is 0 gold. You're not going to get anything for that. But if you drop it on an opal ring, then it's worth 200,000 gold. So there are niche cases, so it is very hard to make a filter that is like very accurate. I've made a filter that is pretty widespread, so you still need some game knowledge on understanding what exalted items are worth picking up still, but my filter at least gives you an idea of what to look out for, I guess. And it's also it's only like a 5 rule filter. It's really basic, but it gives me just a general idea of what I should keep my eyes open for when looking at exalted items. And yeah, that's all I've got for you today, guys. Hopefully this was informative. If I missed any ideas, I'd love to hear them in the comment section. So let me know if I missed anything that has been working for you. I would love to know, and I will catch you in the next one. All right, see you later.